difficulty for another Labour government as well. But that's another story for another day.
Yeah, OK. I want to turn to talking about this government. And I suppose the first obvious question is, I mean, from where you sit with your expertise on the polls, is there anything Rishi Sunak could or should be doing that would help turn things around? Or is this basically, I mean, the polls have been pretty consistent for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, there are three things that Mr. Sunak has always needed to do. The first is to distance himself as strongly as possible from his two predecessors. Mm-hmm. Because we are where we are because of his two predecessors, right? It's Johnson and Partygate and Truss and the fiscal event. These are the only two things you need to know about this Parliament to understand why we are where we are, okay? Mm-hmm. He made a fundamental mistake in the summer of last year in failing to vote and getting his party to vote for the Privileges Committee report that said that Boris Johnson had misled the House of Commons. Such progress as the Conservatives had made, not that great as it was, in reversing the damage done to Liz Truss was basically thrown away in an instant. The Tory vote very clearly fell away after the 17th of June last year. So, and it's only very recently that he's begun also to try and distance himself from Truss. And here's his problem, of course. There are lots of people inside the Conservative Party who still like Boris Johnson. There are even still some people inside the Conservative Party who still like Liz Truss. So the internal pressures and the electoral reality, and this is one of the broader problems he faces, are pushing him in two directions. That's number one. Number two, if Jeremy Hunt had come to me and said, John, I found some money down the back of a sofa. What do you think I should do with it? I would say, Jeremy, don't waste it on tax cuts. Settle the junior doctors' strike and do your damnedest to get the waiting times down. Because while there wasn't before last November any relationship between people, amongst Conservative voters, between their attitudes towards the tax and spend and whether they're willing to vote Conservative again. Okay. Right, the evidence was already. Once you do the right analysis, you could see what was going to happen. But of course, again, the problem is it's an issue where the Conservative Party finds themselves in what's happened in the last 4 years and their reaction to the last 4 years, and where the public reaction is very different. The existential problem the Conservative Party faces is we're a party of the centre-right. Oh dear, we have just presided over the biggest expansion of the state since 1945. We're down in the polls. So it must be true that the reason why we're down in the polls is because we've not been true to our beliefs. This is not how the public reacted. The fascinating thing about public reactions so far is you do not find in the data evidence of what we call in the trade a thermostatic reaction against the expansion of the state. People have so far not said, hang on, time to get the tax burden down. And it doesn't matter if we don't spend quite so much on health. The reaction is the opposite. And, we won't know the answer to this for 5 years or so. But I certainly think at least a question that now faces us is whether or not the pandemic is going to have the same impact on our attitudes towards the state as the last World War did. In other words, that experience of the pandemic, has it meant that people said, hey, you know what, the state can sometimes be rather important? Now, we won't know the answer to that for quite a while. But certainly, whereas the Conservative Party has reacted against the expansion of the state, the public hasn't, which is why they're misreading the signals, right? And the other thing he needs to do, but of course it's very difficult, much more difficult for him to do, he needs to try and improve the economy as much as possible, improve people's living standards, but then also crucially, and this is the really difficult bit, he also has to be able to claim the credit for that. And one of the problems he faces is that basically, whenever you start talking about the economy now, all the opposition have to do is Liz Truss. End of argument. And it's so difficult for the Conservative Party to escape from